Welcome back. And today, we're going to talk about what's next for the Celtics. This is the day of game five that I'm recording this. So, game five has not happened. We may not lose tonight. We may not lose the next game. Even if we win this series, we are not going to win the ring. Um, everyone knows Tatum went out with a pretty scary looking injury in game at the end of game 4. Um it no Everyone thought the worst. They were correct. It was announced yesterday he had a successful surgery for his torn right Achilles. Pretty quick. They took pretty much a day to announce that it was a torn Achilles, and when they did, they announced that he had already went under surgery. So they must have had everything they needed out in New York, and they must have just done it as soon as possible, and then they released it all at once. Because I don't know if I've ever seen a surgery go through that fast, but it's unfortunate. I mean, we talked about it already in one of our most recent videos about, Tatum's my favorite player, Celtics my favorite team, whatever. We don't have to talk all about that, but it's really what is next for the Celtics. And I this is one of the videos where I want to see comments about it because there are so many different ways that the Celtics could go with this next season, even the next few seasons in general. Um because there's just a lot of possibilities. But and I'm not going to really talk about Cleveland. Cleveland lost the series last night. They did not play a great series for at all. Pacers played an amazing series. I don't really know if Cleveland could do anything because this was kind of a really disappointing way to go out, and I don't think that this obviously is not what Cleveland had in mind, being a 64 win team. But I don't really know what they can do. All that I would see for Cleveland to do, like big moves wise, is maybe say, hey, we want Evan Mobley at the 5 and try and find a spot for Jared Allen. But even then, I don't know if it needs to go that far. So I'm not really going to talk about that. I just talked about really the only thing I think they or will do. Um, and I don't know where Jared Allen goes because a lot of teams have a starting center. And Jared Allen is a good center, but he's not the most expensive center. He's not a very cheap center. So I don't really know where he goes because I don't think a team like LA, who needs a center, will be able to afford him from the Cleveland Cavaliers. But I also don't think they're just going to send him to Utah or Washington to just rot because again, what are they going to give Cleveland? So he's going to be a hard person to find a spot for if that is the avenue they decide to go down. But I think a lot of teams would want him, but a lot of teams, again, they like their point guards and center. A lot of teams have their point guards, and a lot of teams have their centers. And if they don't have those, then they're probably going to address that in the draft that comes up soon. So I don't know, but again, bad season for the Cavs. The way or bad ending to a great season for the Cavs. It's not how they wanted it to end, of course, but I don't really know what else they could have done. But back to the Celtics. So everyone has seen like we have almost a $500 million luxury tax that we would have to pay, and that the second apron is creeping up on us. So basically, this is the last game that, or not the last game. This is the last season that we will have the 5 of Drew Holiday, Derek White, Tatum Brown, and Porzingis. And then so you talk about the trades. And again, I think we talked about this on the Hoops on Main channel. If you don't follow, go watch that. We drop every week. New episodes should be out in 2 or 3 days. But Tatum's not getting traded. I don't think Derek White is getting traded. And you're like, why is Derek White the second person you name? Because a lot of people talk about Jalen Brown because the Celtics, I think, are 70 million over the is it they're either 70 million over the hard cap or the salary cap. Again, I don't really know too much about the salary cap and all those CBAs and stuff, but they're 70 million over something. And I don't know if just trading Drew Holiday, who to me is the most likely person to be traded, will get us under that salary cap. So I wouldn't want to trade Jalen Brown. Jalen Brown's the former Finals MVP. He's made All NBA. He's pretty much a perennial All Star at this point. I think he's made 3 or 4 in his career, and he is one of the best versatile wings in the game. Say what you want about his jump shot, but when he is on fire, he's on fire. I think Tatum and Brown fit well together, so I don't think Tatum or Brown gets moved unless Tatum or Brown goes to the front office and demands a trade. I can't imagine Tatum does that anytime soon, especially with him being out for pretty much however long, at least until the end of next season, maybe the season after. But and then Jalen Brown doesn't necessarily seem like he would do that either. So I think those three are safe. Tatum, Brown, and White. I think if you had to pick who to keep between Porzingis and Drew Holiday, I think the front office would maybe rather have Drew Holiday, but I think it makes the most sense to trade Drew Holiday because if you're trading Porzingis, you need to trade Porzingis for a center. You need to. You like we cannot rely on 30 who he will be 39 at next year. 39-year-old Al Horford if he even comes back and doesn't retire. And honestly, Luke Cornett is not someone that should be starting for a team like the Celtics. Now, maybe next year, whatever. Again, we'll talk about next season specifically when we get there. But Luke Cornett's not someone you want to have starting on a deep playoff caliber team. Um, and like you just need someone that you can rely on to start. Like I don't want Al Horford starting. Al Horford should never start a game another game after this season because he's just old. He's still a good player for how old he is, but he's 39, man. He's not gonna last much longer. He shouldn't have a big of a tax load on him. But and then none of the other centers like Kada or Tillman even like they're not people that should be starting either. So you trade Porzingis. But again, a lot of teams have their starting center. The great thing with Porzingis is he is not a traditional center like we were talking about with Jared Allen. He's played the four in his career. He's good enough offensively in the past at least to where he can play the four or he can fit alongside another big man. Um I don't I don't off the top of my head, I don't really know where would want him because I mean he makes about 30 million. He's injury prone. I think he's 30, maybe 29. Um and again, he's just not as reliable as you would like, even though Porzingis loves being in Boston and I love having him on the team too because it makes us normally like unguardable and but I think that they back to what I was saying. I think you trade Drew Holiday though. You have the sixth man of the year who's just waiting. He's waiting to take that starting spot, and he is good enough to take that starting spot. He's obviously not the same as Drew off defensively, but he's better offensively at this time in his career, and he can still do the other things like assist. He's a good rebounder for being my height, but he's waiting. I mean, we have the G League MVP, JD Davison, who's waiting to to get real minutes as well. So I think you kind of just bump everyone up in the point guard spot, and you're pretty much good. Maybe you got to find another third stringer, or maybe the Celtics want a second stringer that's not JD Davison to have all the minutes on. But I think, and this is where we get into next year. If Tatum, I'm gonna just assume Tatum is out for the whole year. I don't think Tatum would be out for the whole year. I think he would be able to come back probably around after All-Star break, which depending on that season, it's like, should he even come back? But let's just say Tatum's out for the whole year. You trade. It's so hard to do this because there's so many hypotheticals, but I think next year you really take pride in if we don't start off the season good, if we're not trading Drew or Porzingis for someone else that is, at least of their caliber and we're downgrading, then I think you really focus on getting minutes to like a Jordan Walsh, to a Baylor Shireman, to again a JD Davison, so we can find who is going to be cemented in our future for when Tatum is back and when we are back into hopefully contention realm. But so I would like to see, guys like Jordan, like I said, maybe you start one of those guys. Maybe you start like a Jordan Walsh or a Baylor Shireman. Maybe they don't play 32 minutes a game, but they play maybe 20, 25 minutes a game. And then you kind of have this spot where it's not necessarily revolving, but like if Jordan Walsh playing, then boom, Baylor Shireman could come in. So it's a different, Baylor Shireman's more of a 3-point sniper than what Jordan Walsh is because Jordan Walsh is more of a defensive specialist. But so that's an avenue that I wouldn't mind to see, especially if we aren't aiming to go crazy in the playoffs, which I don't know if we are. Um, And again, it all depends on who we trade. I think going back to trades, I think Sam Hauser probably gets moved. He's making around $11 million, I think. And he just hasn't been as good as last year. He played in the regular season and he was all right, but he really hasn't played in this postseason. And when he has, he's looked awful. He hasn't been able to make a shot. So I think you move on from him because again, you have like a Baylor Shireman who's ready to take the spot, um, to as a bench piece, of course, not as a starter. But I think that you do some of these trades like again, Drew, because we need to get cheaper to get maybe take a swing on a backup shooting guard that is young that maybe a young, another veteran team didn't want because in my eyes, if we're trading Drew is probably going to go to a contender. Or at least if he doesn't, it's going to be like a third team thing where we trade him to whatever for maybe a first round pick or a young-ish player that looks intriguing that's not expensive, and then that team just moves him in like a day or two after. So same thing I guess can be said with Porzingis. I think there's a world that Porzingis gets shipped to like a Brooklyn or something. Like I think there's a world where Porzingis just gets moved for something to a team that maybe isn't competing right off the bat. I just think that Drew Holiday is more valuable league wide, while Porzingis is more valuable to us currently. I think that they're both valuable, but if you don't understand what that means, like another example would be like Michael Porter Jr. He's super valuable to Denver because of the system and the way they play. But Michael Porter Jr. out on the market and for, in the trade market, it's not as that he's not as valuable as the Denver Nuggets see him. And I think that's sort of the way that the Celtics are seeing Porzingis. I think Porzingis is better than Michael Porter Jr., but um and I don't think it's a big thing. I'm not saying to the Celtics value KP up here and the rest of the leagues down here. Like it might be like this, but I just don't. It's just so hard to find suitors for these teams because again, a lot of teams have their point guard, which is what Drew Holiday. Drew Holiday, I think with if he is the one being traded, I think this is where he starts his like off guard. He goes back to how he was like maybe a shooting guard, not necessarily the prime ball handler, a secondary playmaker who can still make some shots and just defend, instead of being, the main point guard like he'd been in Milwaukee. I mean, even here, even though Celtics have so many plus playmakers, but I think that again, it's hard because you don't know who's available. You don't know what young slash cheap players are available for a team that would want a 35-year-old Drew Holiday. And I think teams would want him, but you got to remember, you got to look at the contract. I think he is making next season he will be making 32 million, then 35 million, and then he has a player option for 37 million. That's not a great contract if you ask me. I don't know really who would want to take a stab at that, especially with that player option. I think if it's a team option, then maybe it looks better, or maybe if it's 1 year less, it looks better. But I mean, if he is, let me see, he is 34, he's about to turn 35. So that means by the end of this season, he will be 35. The end of next season, he will be 36. The end of the year after, he'll be 37. And then that player option year, he will be 38 years old. And I just don't know what Drew Holiday looks like at 38 years old. Um, but yeah, I mean, again, looking at the contract, like Al Horford is making 9.5 for this current season, but he's off the books next year. I assume if he doesn't retire, we'll probably restructure his deal to like a cheaper deal, maybe like 5 million or something. Peyton Pritchard, we have wrapped up $30 million over 4 years. Amazing. 6 million this current season, then 7, 7, 8. Amazing. Can't get better than that for a team that's in the second apron. Shireman, rookie, he's pretty much wrapped up if we want him until 28. Tillman, I think he probably gets moved as well because he hasn't played it all this season. Kada is probably going to stay as a second or third string center. Again, Sam Hauser, 2 million this year, but 10 mil next. 10 mil, 10 mil, 11, then 12. Kind of a lot. I think he gets moved too. Luke Cornett only makes 2 million. He is a free agent this year. I think there's a world where some teams take a stab at him. Again, he's good for what he's been good for us, but I'm not a huge fan. Jordan Walsh, Torrey Craig, and then JD Davison. Um, I just think that there's so many different avenues for the Celtics good to go down, and it's going to be so intriguing to see what they ultimately decide to do. But I don't know. It's for the whole time I've been a Celtics fan, the first year I was a Celtic fan was 2016, 2017, where right that was the Isaiah Thomas fourth in MVP voting year, where we got to the conference finals versus the LeBron Cavs, and we lost in five. And then the next year, Tatum, we got back to the conference finals. This was like when Kyrie was out, Hayward was out, and we were this like super young team. We were like Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart, Jalen Brown, Jason Tatum, and whoever the center was at that time in the conference finals going toe to toe with LeBron. We took them to 7, I believe, and we lost them pretty much every year after that. I mean, conference final, NBA final, or conference final. I think we had a first round exit in 2021. Obviously 2020 we game 7 with the Heat in the conference finals, then 21. Like I said, I think we lost to Brooklyn in 5 in the first round. That was Tatum had a 50-point game. I think Brown was out for the playoffs. And then 2022, back in the NBA finals, lost to the Warriors in 6. 2023, we were a game away from being the only team to ever come back down 3-0 in the conference finals. Tatum sprained his ankle. We end up losing after that. And then 2024, we win the ring. 2025, we most likely end up getting beat by the Knicks. So I have seen a lot of good winning from this team. Again, only one ring in that time, but one ring is better than a lot of teams have seen in the past however many years. But it's just so intriguing as a team like the Celtics. We're like, sure, we might end up having bad years, like in the early 2010s, where like we traded Garnett and Pierce, or Garnett and Pierce were on their last, leg with the Celtics. We were bad for a few years. We get Brown, we get Tatum, we jump back right. We pretty much jumped right back into contention. That might be something else. That might be something that we go through next year. Maybe I'm not saying the Celtics try and tank to get a top whatever pick. Because again, I don't know what our picks look like. I think we have our picks. Um, if I had to, if I had to look, I mean, I don't know I don't think we really trade many of our own picks. Yeah, next year we have our first round pick, and that's it. No other first round picks from anyone else. But there's there's just too many things to go down, and I don't want to ramble on and just say about all the possibilities that there could be, because this could be such a long video, and I don't have the answers. Nobody has the answers. I'm sure the front office. This is only 2 days after Tatum tore his Achilles. They don't have the answers either yet. But it's just going to be intriguing to see what they go through. And what route they decide to go. Where it's like, hey, Jalen Brown is a great player, but Jalen Brown does not is not. I love Brown. He's a top probably 20 player in the league. He doesn't do what Jason Tatum does. He's a good scorer, but he's not the playmaker that Jason Tatum is. He's not the you know he's the vocal leader of our team, but on the court, he's just not our leader. And I think that the Celtics would still be good if we go and try out. I think we would probably end up being a play-in team. I don't think that Jalen Brown would be able to lead the Celtics back to the second round or the conference final or even the NBA final with if Tatum is out the whole year. But there's so many different ways that this could go. Again, I want to if you're watching this, I comment just anything because I want to see what people think. Where it's like, do you trade Drew and Porzingis? Do you trade just one of them? Do you trade Jalen Brown to get off all of it? I also don't know how many players we need to trade to be under the second apron. So if someone else knows, so if one of you know how much, if we have to trade both Drew and Porzingis, if that's the way we go, or if we can trade just one of them, or do we have to should we just go for a Jalen Brown where we knock it all out at once? I want to see, and I tell me the teams you want those players to be traded to, and I will look at them all. Maybe if we have a bunch of comments, what a video I'll do is I'll take the trades I see in the comments, and I'll make a video about that too, and try them out on Fanspo, and I'll comment, I'll show you, and I'll say if this works, then hey, maybe we try and restructure it if it doesn't work financially or anything like that. But again, I want to know what you think the Celtics should do. Um, tell me about the Cavs too. I have no problem about talking about the Cavs. I just don't have the answers for the Cavs, and they are not my favorite team. So that is why this video is mainly around the Celtics. But again, let me know what you think about all this. It's a awful way to end our season because again, whether our season ends later tonight or it ends in 2 days, 4 days, a week because maybe we push it to game 7 or whatever, then okay, but still, let me know.